Hey, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to another edition of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. I am your host, Richard Holdridge. As always, I have this show that I like doing on my Facebook page and on my YouTube channel. But don't forget, you can also catch my show on WQEE. That just happens to be a radio station up in Noonan, 99.1 FM on your dial. And so about 5-6 years ago, 2018 was right around the time where I really had interest in getting on the radio and doing sports broadcasting on a sports talk show. And this is just as good. And the platform that we use now, I mean, the industry has changed, and I've really been blessed to have not only this platform on my Facebook page and YouTube channel, but also on the Georgia Alabama Sports Live Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can catch that show every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday starting at noon, and it is a scoreboard show. On tomorrow's show, I'm going to recap everything that happened in week 7 of high school football. So we've got just a jam-packed show for you today. The Atlanta Braves are in the playoffs. It had to go back to 162 for them to get in, and it wasn't easy. But the Braves will play the San Diego Padres on Wednesday for a best of 3 to try to get to the NLCS. I'm going to have my top 10 NFL teams. And also, we look back at the legacy of 2 sports legends that were lost in the same day. I mean, Pete Rose and Dikembe Mutombo. And I'll talk briefly about both players and what they meant to the sports world. And just 2 icons just gone too soon. All right, just in case you're wondering, because I like doing this. This is episode 919. I'm getting closer to 1,000 episodes. That is the goal, to say, hey, I did a podcast. It's over 4 years old, and I've had 1,000 episodes. That's where I want to be as a podcaster. But I'm not just a podcaster. I'm doing a lot of other things, including sports broadcasting. It really got my start as the play-by-play announcer for the Columbus Rapids back in 2021. And it led to calling high school football for the local cable company in East Alabama, and then to Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And I've been truly blessed that I've been a part of the Georgia Alabama Sports Live family for approximately 1.5 years. And I am ready to go on and do great things for Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And we're building our brand, and we're also recruiting a lot of just up-and-coming broadcasters. And that's really what I want to do, is just give back. I mean, I love being an on-air talent. I love just being in front of the mic, but I also love the producing side, and I just want to give back and just to share my wealth and knowledge of the broadcasting industry and the struggles, because there has been struggles. And when I thought about my struggles, I was thinking about when I was calling games when I was at Freed-Hardeman with the voice of Chester County High football, Shane Connors. And we had a pretty good tandem. I thought we had pretty good chemistry on the air. Shane would later go on to be the program director at several local stations in Jackson, Tennessee. Like in Columbus, we have Davis Broadcasting. We have P&B Broadcasting. Well, Jackson had their own broadcasting company. I went there right after college to apply for a job. And Shane Connors, unfortunately, didn't remember me because we had this special chemistry on the air, and it was like I didn't even exist. And I really took it personal. And I think that fueled the motivation to me to work harder to try to get a broadcasting job. And let's be honest here. I mean, I've lived in big markets my entire broadcasting career. And it wasn't until I moved to Columbus in 2015. And I didn't really know about the broadcasting industry in Columbus until 2018. I actually expressed interest when I first listened to the Sports Zone with Stephen Williams. I've reached out to Stephen Williams. I want to try to get him on my podcast. I love getting broadcasters to tell their story on how they got through the industry and where they are now. And so, Stephen, if you're watching, would love to get you on the podcast. So come on. All right, let's go ahead and dive right into the sports, because we had quite a few events that happened yesterday, including the doubleheader, the winner take all for the Braves. And I tell you, that first game to blow that lead, they had a 3-0 lead. Spencer Schwallenbach pitched incredible. And the Braves bullpen did it again to them. And they blew this game in game one, which means you got to see the Mets clinch on your home field. I was hoping that the Braves would just sweep the Mets to knock them out of the playoffs altogether. I mean, I know the Diamondbacks were hoping for that too. So that game two, and Chris Sale was supposed to be the scheduled starter. He was a late scratch. So Garrett Holmes ends up taking the mound. And I admit, I was nervous about this game, but my word, 3-0, as that was just an incredible performance. Marcelo Zuna kind of gave them some insurance runs in the seventh. Raisel Iglesias, who had 12 pitches and just couldn't get out of that first game in the eighth inning, comes on to get the save. And the Atlanta Braves are going to the playoffs. This is the 7th year in a row that the Braves have made the postseason. Now, it's going to be tough. I'm not going to lie to you. You got to play 3 games in San Diego because the way the wild card format is, it's a best of 3, and they're all at the higher seed. So it's going to be against the San Diego Padres on Wednesday. And if the Braves are able to get past the Padres, because I do believe in a thing called momentum, they have the Dodgers waiting, which they have a depleted pitching staff. I mean, Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler, Tyler Glasnow. I mean, these are not reliable starters for the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers are in trouble. The other matchup, you got the New York Mets are going to play the Milwaukee Brewers. Big shout out to Bobby Z. I hope that his Milwaukee Brewers end up beating the New York Mets. And then the winner of that series will take on the Philadelphia Phillies. Well, over in the American League, the stage is set. Let me pull up some of the playoff matchups that you're going to see as you got the Detroit Tigers. How about those Detroit Tigers making it to the playoffs for the first time in 10 years? And the Detroit Tigers, that, the sports market of Detroit / Michigan is wearing off on the Detroit Tigers. You got the Detroit Lions, you got the Michigan Wolverines, and the Tigers want to get in on the action. I mean, we saw that with the city of Tampa back in 2020, with the Tampa Bay Rays. Well, they're taking on the Houston Astros, who just about make it to the ALCS every single year. They are a constant. They've been the dynasty the last 10 years, winning the World Series in 2017. And then turning around and winning the World Series in 2022. And it doesn't matter who their manager is. The Houston Astros have been the standard of baseball. Cheating or no cheating, it's been the Astros. And it's been that constant of Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman. They've been there since the beginning. Justin Verlander, he comes back from injury. And he's a big question mark when it comes to the Houston Astros pitching. I really want to see the Tigers try to win this series, but I think that the Houston Astros, they just got too much momentum. And you've seen what they have done, making it to the World Series. They made it to the World Series in 2019. They went to the ALCS last year, lost to their in-state rival, the Texas Rangers. They've had some pretty close World Series losses. 2021, losing to the Braves. They had home field in that World Series. 2020 ended up losing to the Tampa Bay Rays in the ALCS. But, it's a constant that the Houston Astros make it to the ALCS every year since 2017. And so I wouldn't expect any other outcome. All right, the Kansas City Royals back in the playoffs for the first time since 2015 when they won the World Series. They are taking on the Baltimore Orioles. The New York Yankees and the Cleveland Guardians are the number 1 and number 2 seeds, respectively. And I'm excited the baseball playoffs are here. Get ready for October baseball, the World Series. It is exciting. And then we get ready for 2025, which, by the way, the Atlanta Braves will be hosting the All-Star game in 2025. And I cannot wait for that. All right. I wanted to give you the rundown of the Monday night games. We had another doubleheader on Monday Night Football. That was pretty amazing. The Tennessee Titans get their first win of the season. Now, Will Levis ended up injuring himself in this game, so Mason Rudolph comes in relief and picks up the win against a Miami Dolphins team that is struggling right now because they don't have a starting quarterback. The Titans, which DeAndre Hopkins is on the trade block, I'm here to say if he goes to the Chiefs, I'm going to be sick to my stomach. If you're Kansas City, why don't you just get Julio Jones? Just get whoever, Antonio Brown. It doesn't matter. I mean, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and it just makes me sick. I want DeAndre Hopkins to play for something special. I thought that Tennessee was going to be the destination, that DeAndre Hopkins was going to thrive. Remember, they had Calvin Ridley now. And so I think that the Tennessee Titans do have some receivers, but, they're missing Derrick Henry. He's getting up there in age. And so they did the right thing by letting him go. And Tony Pollard, good running back, but he's not a one. We'll see. I was looking at the stats. Mason Rudolph played a lot better than Will Levis, who seems to just give away games. And Treylon Burks, the wide receiver from Arkansas, I would like to see him get more involved. And I just think that the Titans have not been the same team, that team that went to the AFC Championship in 2019. They just haven't been there. I mean, they were an overall number one seed, and we saw what happened to them in 2022, losing to 2020, losing to the Bengals, and the Titans haven't been the same. And I really did not like them firing Mike Vrabel. I mean, I thought Mike Vrabel was a good coach. Remember, this is the same franchise that had Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator. The Detroit Lions, after, getting a couple of wins, the Detroit Lions trying to prove that they are the best team in the NFC. And I think right now, because you'll see my ratings coming up pretty soon, the Detroit Lions go to 3-1 by knocking off the Seattle Seahawks. So we have another team that is unbeaten no more. And the Detroit Lions, who play the Cowboys, not next week, but they'll have a bye and they'll play the Cowboys in 2 weeks. The Detroit Lions trying to prove that last year was not a fluke. They make it to the NFC Championship. They're playing hard for Dan Campbell. It's not just Dan Campbell. It's the offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. It's Jared Goff being efficient. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's Sam Laporta, even though he's banged up. The Detroit Lions have the best offensive line in football, and it was too much for the Seattle Seahawks, which are a different team playing on the road. And so, as a 49ers fan, happy they lost. And the Seattle Seahawks are still atop of the division in the NFC West, but they got the 49ers right below them at 2-2. So Seahawks 3-1. So that's a pretty good segue. I'm going to throw up those rankings. So the way I do it, and I like doing this because, Colin Cowherd has his herd hierarchy. He does every Tuesday. And so, I mean, he does it based off of the team, if they're good or not. It has nothing to do with the record. And, he factors in injuries and all that. I could tell you with full assurance that the 49ers are not the same team without Christian McCaffrey. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion. They're not as explosive without Christian McCaffrey. So let's go and throw up those rankings. All right, starting with number 10, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who got one of the most surprising victories, beating the Philadelphia Eagles, which Nick Sirianni is now on the hot seat. Tampa Bay looking pretty good. They're in first place in the NFC South, and they got a big showdown this Thursday night in Atlanta, taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Cannot wait for that game. Baker Mayfield is really just an efficient quarterback, and everything is working for Tampa Bay. And if you look, I know they're ranked 10th, but they got wins over the Lions and the Eagles. I mean, that is impressive. But they do have that one loss to the Denver Broncos. I'm just going to throw that out there. Number 9, the San Francisco 49ers. Still a great team. They get off the schneid and they get a win over the New England Patriots. They could easily be 3-1 right now because they blew a game against the Rams. They're only going to get healthier, although Christian McCaffrey, there's no timetable for him to return. They did lose Javon Hargrave for the season, but I still think the 49ers, they make up for it because Fred Warner is the best middle linebacker in all of football. Nick Bosa is a ferocious pass rusher. I mean, they've got Diamador Lenore, Talona Hufunga, a great defense, and the 49ers have the weapons that they need. And Brock Purdy is the most efficient quarterback after 25 starts. So the 49ers will take on the Arizona Cardinals next week. And then the other 2-2 team on my rankings, the Baltimore Ravens, which in hindsight, they could easily be 4-0 because they should have beat the Chiefs in week 1. They let one slip away against the Las Vegas Raiders, and they were 0-2 behind the curve. But Derrick Henry, just feed him the rock. Derrick Henry has been the ultimate eraser for a team that has always been a very consistent team offensively and defensively. And it was the addition of Roquan Smith that really helped that Ravens defense just solidify themselves. I'm telling you, it's not going to be easy because the Pittsburgh Steelers is right there. But when you have the Bengals and the Browns just continuing to lose, the Ravens are looking like they're in prime position to make a deep run like they did getting the overall number 1 seed last year in the AFC. And Lamar Jackson, what can you say about him? I mean, he's got some special players around him. Isaiah Likely, man, I should have picked him up on my fantasy team when I had the chance. Great tight end, Zay Flowers. I think that, the Baltimore Ravens are really going to start to click, and we'll see just the difference coming up. I'm looking at their schedule. First of all, the Battle of Maryland coming up in a couple of weeks when they take on the Washington Commanders, which, by the way, the Washington Commanders are 3-1, and I didn't have them on the list. Yeah, I could have easily put the Washington Commanders on the list. They're number 11. I had to put the Ravens and the 49ers because they look very good at 2-2. And I know people are going to criticize me. Oh, you're biased. The 49ers are your team. Why did you put them on this list? The 49ers are one of the best teams in the NFL. I mean, look at just because they're 2-2, that doesn't mean they're one of the best teams in the NFL. All right, getting off track here. All right, number 7, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They did lose their first game of the season to the Indianapolis Colts. I think that Mike Tomlin is going to ride with Justin Fields as long as he is winning games for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I do not trust Arthur Smith as a play caller, as the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that his schemes are vanilla, and the way that the Steelers are winning games is through physicality and that defense led by TJ Watt. I almost said JJ Watt there. TJ Watt, the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 7. The number 6 team, the Seattle Seahawks, they did lose to the Detroit Lions tonight, but I still think the Seattle Seahawks, with their brand new coach, Mike McDonald, they have a receiving core of DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Very good receiving core, and their defense is very underrated. And I think when you have like Wooten, Witherspoon, it's not quite the Legion of Boom, but they have some young players that are energetic, that can get at it. They are ball hawks, and I think that the Seattle Seahawks are going to be a playoff team. There's no question about that. Number 5, the Houston Texans. Now, the Texans' only loss was to the Minnesota Vikings, but the Texans with C.J. Stroud, and when you have Joe Mixon, which has been banged up, you have Tank Dell, you have Stephon Diggs. I mean, C.J. Stroud has got weapons. On the defensive side of the ball, I mean, the Houston Texans have got Will Anderson, who is a double-digit sack guy. I think that the Houston Texans, one of the top teams in the AFC. Number 4, the Buffalo Bills. They did suffer their first loss on Sunday Night Football to the Baltimore Ravens, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the Buffalo Bills have the MVP right now. As we speak, if the season were to end today, Josh Allen is the MVP. He doesn't need Stephon Diggs. I mean, he's got James Cook, who is just improving game after game. Keon Coleman is going to be one of the top rookies in the NFL. Their defense is a little suspect. I think that I don't trust the Buffalo Bills defense in big time situations. I think that Patrick Mahomes can shred that defense. Lamar Jackson did on Sunday night. I mean, if you're an elite quarterback, you can move the ball on that Bills defense. All right, number 3, the Detroit Lions. I got to see when the Lions play the Vikings, because that is going to be some must-see TV coming up. Now, they do have a bye. They will play the Dallas Cowboys, like I mentioned. Then they will take on the Minnesota Vikings. Get this, October the 20th in Minnesota. That's my number 2 team, the Minnesota Vikings. I never would have thought that after getting rid of Kirk Cousins, having J.J. McCarthy go down with the injury. Well, let's take it all the way back to last year. Just letting Dalvin Cook walk. I mean, that was unheard of. But the Minnesota Vikings are right there, 4-0 on the season. It's not just that they're 4-0 and they're lucky. You know, they're beating some pretty impressive teams. I actually thought that win over the 49ers was very impressive. And the Minnesota Vikings, Kevin O'Connell, great offensive mind as a head coach, leader of men. But it's Brian Flores, who I believe he's going to get an NFL coaching job somewhere next season. He deserves it. Maybe Jacksonville. I think that if Miami fires Mike McDaniel, I mean, that would be just the ultimate payback, is just to go ahead and rehire Brian Flores. I mean, the Raiders did it with Art Shell. Why couldn't they just rehire Brian Flores? You always see retread coaches anyway in this league. I mean, this league is all about second chances, right? And then the number 1 team, and I think they're not going to be number 1 for long. I think the Kansas City Chiefs lose their first game in 2 weeks to the San Francisco 49ers. They don't have Rashee Rice. He is going to be out for the season. Don't tell me they're trying to get DeAndre Hopkins. Don't tell me they're trying to get Julio Jones. I don't want to see it on my news feed. I'm tired of the Chiefs just getting somebody off the street like they did with Nico Hardman last year. Juju Smith-Schuster this year, trying to go after Marquez Valdez-Scantling. If it doesn't work out in Miami, if Tyreek Hill is disgruntled, I mean, he'll take a pay cut to go back to Kansas City. It makes me sick to my stomach. But this is what the Miami Heat was with LeBron 10 years ago, that veterans will take less money because they want to play with superstars. These wide receivers want to play with Patrick Mahomes. And the Chiefs, they have a luxury. Not only just a brilliant mind of Andy Reid, but Patrick Mahomes and that defense. I keep saying the defense is underrated. Chris Jones is one of the most clutch defensive players of all time. And Steve Spagnuolo, why hasn't he gotten a head coaching job anytime soon? I mean, I know he's been a head coach before, but sometimes it just bothers me when these guys just want to just be a defensive coordinator for the rest of their life, like a Dick LeBeau. I mean, it's weird, but hey, I mean, we see that in college too with Bud Foster at Virginia Tech. So, hey, you want to be a defensive coordinator all your life, be a number 2. That's cool. Anyway, that is my top 10 teams in the NFL, according to me, Richard Holdridge. Just like Colin Cowherd does the herd hierarchy. I like doing that too. Man, this has been a fun show. But before we go, my thoughts have been on just 2 legends that passed away. And I do have some things I want to say. First of all, Pete Rose. I grew up a baseball fan. I remember, Pete Rose's legacy. He bet on baseball. He was a manager and a coach. 1986, Charlie Hustle, played for the Reds, played for the Phillies. He was part of the Big Red Machine. I know I had San Francisco Giants shortstop Johnny LeMaster on this show. I would love to get Johnny LeMaster on the show and find out what was his memory of Pete Rose, because I know that the Giants played the Reds in the 70s, and with the passing of Pete Rose, I would love to get Johnny LeMaster on and just have some thoughts about that. This was my childhood. Pete Rose got banned for life for betting on baseball. and he is not in the Hall of Fame. He's got the most hits than any player in the history of baseball, and it is time that we put him in the Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, he passed away at the age of 83, and I remember as a kid, I remember the commissioner banning him for life. I also remember back in 1999 when Jim Gray gave that awkward interview. And then he finally admitted, Pete Rose came out with a book called My Prison Without Bars, and where he admits betting on baseball. And yeah, unfortunately, this is his legacy, but it shouldn't be, because he played baseball the way it should be played. I mean, he was a modern day Ty Cobb. He was Charlie Hustle, and he is going to be missed. And then another icon in the sports world that was lost, in fact, lost way too soon. Dikembe Mutombo passed away at the age of 58. The former Denver Nugget, Atlanta Hawk, Philadelphia 76er. He was an 8-time All-Star. He was a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. He was drafted in 91 out of Georgetown. He was a little bit older player because he didn't start college until he was 21. But Dikembe Mutombo, known as Mount Mutombo, who was a larger-than-life personality and just an overall great human being, but he also was a ferocious defender when it came to block shots. Dikembe Mutombo shined for the Denver Nuggets when they were an 8 seed and they knocked off the Seattle Supersonics. That iconic photo of him laying on the ground holding the basketball. And then he goes to the Atlanta Hawks post-Dominique. And remember, this Hawks team, they took it to the Chicago Bulls. They went up 2-1 on the Bulls in the second round of the playoffs. That team with Dikembe Mutombo, Christian Laettner, Alan Henderson, Mookie Blaylock, Steve Smith. Yeah, I can't believe they didn't have that in the Last Dance. That I want to say that was the year that Michael Jordan beat the Jazz the first time, so 97. But yeah, I'll have to fact check on that one. But I do remember the Atlanta Hawks had Dikembe Mutombo, and then they had that monster trade. The Philadelphia 76ers, who had the MVP, Allen Iverson, is like, look, we're about to play the Lakers in the NBA Finals. We need to get somebody that can guard Shaq. So they end up getting Dikembe Mutombo from the Atlanta Hawks. I think the Hawks ended up got Glenn Robinson, Sharif Abdur-Rahim. I think that's a different trade. But the Atlanta Hawks, I remember trading away Theo Ratliff to get they ended up getting Theo Ratliff in that trade as Dikembe Mutombo went to the 76ers. He will definitely be missed. A humanitarian. He was in a Geico commercial a couple years ago, which was funny. I mean, it's tough when you lose 2 sports icons in the same day. It really is tough. Well, this has been a show that has gone on 30 minutes. I do an hour. So on WQEE, I do an hour. And so you're going to take this portion of the show. I'm going to take the scoreboard show that I'm going to do on the Georgia Alabama Sports Live Facebook page and YouTube channel. And that's the show that you're going to get on WQEE. And I'm on WQEE. And like Carl Lewis said after, while he was singing the national anthem, I'll make up for it. All right. Have a great rest of your night, everybody.